Did you get in the truck okay?
Yeah, thanks.
I'm surprised you knew how to work a combination. You hadn't been very good at it all morning. Ooh. Nice bull.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that boy. Oh, gosh. That's great. That's great.
It's
I hope
good
you
stuff.
do something with that.
Yeah, so we,
Captured it all.
Huh?
I was there, captured it all.
Surprising.
We got a little bit, actually they're waiting on us.
there's the first boy.
That's the one you took.
Yep.
I saw him in the picture with the other bull.
Yeah.
Ooh. Is that the back strap?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty neat. I mean, these kids have never seen an elk, never heard an elk bugle, and
the fact that they can turn this into their food for their table.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole process, it changes your mindset of how the world works and
Yep.
what's going on, you know, and the respect you've got to have for habitat and animals. And
yep. Yeah, and like the dad said, he's like, he was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 5. He's 8. The past 3 years have been nothing but doctor's appointments. Just, he's still had a port that was dripping chemo stuff into him. And he's like, as soon as he found out he was coming to Idaho elk hunting, he's like, it's been the bright spot for the last year and a half. That's all he's looked forward to. Mm-hmm. So, something
I'm
that
glad
we
it
take
worked
for
out.
granted.
Thank the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
He had a hand in that.
That's what I told him. Like, God placed that elk there for him, because I've never seen, in all of my hunting, I've never seen an elk that dumb in the rut.
This is a good one. I've seen
Yeah.
some raghorns that are pretty dumb.
Yeah.
But not one like that.
Yeah, he left cows and came to us.
Sheesh. That was going to be one of my questions. I was going to say, do you have cows?
Yep.
All right, guys. Go ahead and, Corey, start us off.
So, that sandwich, egg and olive sandwich, I hadn't had one since 1969. And I went to Murrah, graduated from Murrah in 1970 down the road here. And we would come to Brent's after school and hang out and have a soda. This was a drugstore and a fountain bar, So it's pretty cool to be back here.
1969 was the last time you were here.
Yeah. I think I can remember being here.
That's like
Now, I've been
almost
down the
50
road,
years
but
ago.
I've never come in. Yeah. Let's take a quick blessing.
Absolutely.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with Corey and talk about something that we enjoy, something that you've allowed us to be a part of, Lord. Please bless this food, guide and direct us in all things. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's awesome. So, back in 1969, I'm guessing you weren't an elk hunter yet.
No. Now, I had been to Estes Park, and I decided I'm going to do this because I saw a bunch of elk and mule deer, and I went to Estes Park in 1967. 1967. I was 15 years old with my mother.
Family vacation?
And my aunt and my daddy's worked in the restaurant business, so he was working all the time, so we went without daddy. But that was a lot of fun. I snuck the end of a fly rod, and you weren't supposed to fish in some of those lakes. And so I snuck the fly rod and some line and some flies, and I walked stiff-legged like I had a hurt leg. And then I just flipped that thing out there, and I filled it up with cutthroats. I made a little fort in the water and filled it up with cutthroats. And then we were walking out, and I picked all these beautiful wildflowers from my mother. And I walked up to her and I handed them to her, and she goes like that, and the sign says, "Do not pick the flowers." That's some of the memories I have. But the elk and the mule deer were cool. And I said, I'm coming back to do this. So I went on my first elk hunt in 1988. And gosh, I did everything wrong. And I didn't learn anything because I didn't know I was doing it wrong. I just wasn't any good, But I got lucky as I started trying to build calls. And I met these guys in Arizona who'd killed some monster elk, and they helped me develop calls. And they were as good as I could make. But then I met your daddy, Rocky, in Michigan at a show. And I'm there showing my deer calls and my waterfowl calls and all this stuff. And I keep hearing this incredible bugling and cow calling. And so I kind of walked away from my booth and I went over and I looked, and there was this guy, and I watched and said, "Man, you are darn good. I want to learn. I'm before you tell me anything, I'm trying to create a great elk category for my game call company." And he said, "That's fine." And he showed me how he was doing it. That call's different. He says, "Yeah, I got a patent applied for it. And I call it the pallet plate." And so we started talking, and one thing led to another, and bought Rocky's patent, but he had the rights to keep making them. And so Bugling Bull is his company, and he's done great with that. And so it was a small piece of our whole game call lineup that we did. But in elk, it was awesome. What really changed it for bugles was this you're stretching over reeds. Abe and Son had a great bugle. Yep. Had a latex.
Stretched over a backing plate.
Yeah, and the whole deal was getting the tension right so that you could manipulate it and do what you need to do for the highs and lows.
Yep.
And I said, I'm going to make a silicone reed. I saw some technology in the medical industry, and I'll make that reed so anybody can pop it on. And then the secret was getting the reed the right thickness. So we went to Wisconsin and found a molder up there that dealt in silicone compression molds. And we made the molds, and that really made that product a good one.
Yep.
And then came the Hoochie Mama and other calls like that as far as elk goes. But
for sure.
Yeah.
So what year was that when you got started? Was that like 94 in there when you really got serious about the elk calls?
Yeah, probably 94, 95.
Awesome.
In 95, I went on a tour out west, going to different stores, giving seminars. And you're from Boise, and I went to Boise, and the place was called Intermountain. Are they still there, Intermountain?
They've closed, yeah.
I believe the guy's daddy had died, and so he and his mother were running the store. So they lined up this big seminar. This guy's going to come. And
a guy from Mississippi coming to Idaho for a seminar.
From Mississippi, coming to Idaho. And so they rented an auditorium. About 1,000 people showed up, and I gave away 1,000. I gave away all those. Everybody got a call. And I said, okay, we're going to have some fun learning about how to use this call and why it's so much better. And I just started getting started, and the guy in the back said, hey, what's a redneck like you? And I could barely hear him, going to teach us Idaho boys. How you going to teach us how to hunt elk? You don't know how to hunt elk from Mississippi. So, not everybody could hear him, so I repeated it over my lapel mic over the whole auditorium, so everybody's getting, ooh, he's not being very nice to the guest speaker. And that's why I said, well, look, buddy, I'm going to tell you something. We had a lot of elk in Mississippi, and we killed them all, and we're coming to Idaho. And that cracked everybody up. So anyway, it was fun.
Old redneck from Mississippi coming to Idaho to teach them about elk hunting.
We were lucky that I was in the business, so I'd leave the end of August and stay for 6 weeks in different parts of New Mexico and Colorado. And I was doing nothing but listening and learning and figuring out how to call them. The next thing came video, trying to share with people. And what my goal was to teach people to love elk so that they would protect the habitat and the elk and the resource. Because if they don't do that, if you don't love something, you don't know that, you don't want to protect it. It's not on your mind.
Yep.
So that was that's what our efforts were. But we really got lucky. One year we took an extra guy, and he was the caller for Will Walker, a friend of mine. And so we had a cameraman, a caller back there, and rather than the elk walking in and looking straight at you or stopping at 75 yards, the caller's 100 yards back, and he just walks by broadside, and Will stops him and shoots him behind the shoulder. And we were ecstatic. We said, we may have figured this deal out, and we did. After that, we take 3 people on every hunt, and it's magical. My wife even calls now. She's awesome. Good at it. She says, I know what you boys are thinking.
Know how to say the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So what's your earliest memory of hunting? What were you thinking you wanted to be in the hunting industry growing up? Or you knew you always wanted to be a hunter, but do you have that first memory of what triggered it and really got in your blood?
My daddy worked a lot, but he would take me hunting because I loved it so much. And we lived on 52 acres, and I had a little lake. I could fish, squirrel hunt, rabbit hunt, and every once in a while see a deer track, not very often. So I did that and just fell in love with it. My uncles would take me hunting because Daddy would work for them running one of the 5 restaurants, and they'd get to be off and go hunting and take me. So, getting to do that, and duck hunting was really the first thing that really just lit my fire. I was at a place called Fighting Bayou, and I was 11 years old, so that would have been 1963. And my uncle was a great caller, and you're leaning up against these trees in flooded timber, acre trees, mainly nut olive is the main tree that the ducks love that produces the acorns, and some willow oaks and some water oaks. But anyway, he started calling this flock of ducks. There was about 10 ducks. Next thing you know, more joined, and there was like 3 layers of ducks. And like 200 ducks came through those trees, and he told me, he says, you do not shoot. You hug that tree, and you don't do nothing till you hear a gun go off. And I'm hugging that tree and watching them ducks. I'm not supposed to leave them to look. He said, I don't even want them to see your eyes. And I'm just staring at all this, you know. And they were coming down, and all of a sudden they started shooting. I never shot. I just, oh my gosh, I'm going to get into this. So that really lit my fire. And then deer hunting and just anything that walked or crawled, I was going to chase it, you know.
Was that your Uncle Gus?
That was Uncle Gus.
Uncle Gus?
It was.
No.
How did you know Gus?
I didn't know him. I don't know if I've talked to you about him or if I've heard you talk about him.
I've written about him before.
That's awesome. So then you worked in restaurant industry and continued doing that even after you started the call company.
Well, you have to, because you can't make any money, and you're trying your best to have enough money to start your little company. So I got out of college with a business degree, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started working with my daddy. We had one restaurant that was real big, had banquet rooms, and I managed the banquet rooms, 13 of them. And we didn't have a hotel associated with the restaurant, so we would do all the things like Rotary clubs and Kiwanis clubs and ladies' luncheons and weddings and stuff like that. So that's what I did. But I had my company. I started that in 1976. And I'd just make calls, and then I'd get enough calls built. I'd go to a show. I'd go to turkey show. First, I started out with turkey calls because they were, it was really growing. The NWTF was really starting out and was starting to transplant turkeys across the country. The wild turkeys had been trapped, and that was a great opportunity. And I learned a lot about doing things in the industry and so forth. I went to the first SHOT Show in '84. And I thought you sold there. So I had my Bronco and I had it jam-packed full of boxes of calls. And I put all this, I thought you sold them, but you took orders and shipped them later. And I remember I said, I don't know how long I can do that. I don't like concrete and steel. There's too much concrete and steel in Atlanta for me. That's where it was in Atlanta.
And that was in '84.
'84. And it started sleeting and snowing. It was in January. And the big deal is you cannot break that booth down. I said, I'm never coming back to a SHOT Show. I don't care if they don't let me come back. I broke that booth down, got in that Bronco, put it in 4-wheel drive, and got out of Atlanta before they shut everything down. You know. But next year, I think it was in Houston. I went back to the SHOT Show.
And you've been standing on a lot of concrete and steel for the
And
last 30 years.
I never sat down. The customer walked up there. I wanted to teach him. I wanted to share with him, because if you love this sport, you'll love the habitat, you'll learn to protect it, you'll understand it, you'll learn to identify trees and plants and what's benefit and what's not, what's invasive, what's not. You teach somebody to love something, they'll want to protect it.
Totally.
You protect your kids because you love them, you know them. And so that's been my effort. And I don't know how successful I've been at that, but we've shared hunting with a lot of people. And it's been fun, and it still is.
Well, and you know, just the enthusiasm that you have for it. I can remember watching the Truth One about big bulls.
Oh God!
And I still, we don't name a lot of our elk when we're hunting, but if I'm going to give a bull a name, it's Old Bucketmouth. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think it was Montana, you were walking down a skid road, and you're talking about Old Bucketmouth. And then I still, if a bull bugles and just has that deep growly sound, I'll turn to my hunting partners and be like, there's Old Bucketmouth.
When we make contact with one repeatedly, and he's got a very distinctive, one of them we named Donkey, one of them we named Calliope, one of them we named Mardi Gras, because he was always partying, you know. That was all in, those bulls were named in northern New Mexico between Angel Fire and Eagle Nest on the Merino Ranch. So those were fun times.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, the legacy you hope to leave through your involvement in hunting is just the love of the sport, the love of the industry, the love of the animal, the conservation side of it.
Realizing that they're not going to be there if they don't have habitat. If elk don't have corridors to migrate, if they can't go from the high country to the low country so that they can survive and feed. And if you can't protect that, so I'm a life member of the RMEF. I love it. I'm a life member of the NWTF. And Ducks Unlimited, I'm a big supporter of Ducks Unlimited. For sure. All these conservation organizations have got a mission, and that's their mission, is to help protect that habitat. And Ducks Unlimited is so important to me because without clean water, the wetlands filter the water and make good water for us to drink, and we can't live without good water. So there's so much good that they do.
Totally.
But the people that live in an urban lifestyle, they've never seen a cow. They don't know about this, and there's so much of it left in the United States, but so much of it has been taken by parking lots and buildings. And one time I was on an airplane, and the guy said, "So what are you doing? Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going elk hunting." "No, I'm an anti-hunter. I don't agree with hunting." I said, "Oh, really? Okay, that's okay." I said, "So are you a vegetarian?" As a matter of fact, I'm a vegetarian. I said, "Well, we're all consumers in this society. Every one of us take from this earth that we live on. So where do you live?" I said, "I live in an apartment complex in California." I said, "Okay." Well, that apartment complex was habitat for something before they cleared it, poured the slab, and built the apartment for you to live in. So you killed coons, birds, rabbits, coyotes, mountain lions, whatever lived there. You took away their habitat."
Yeah.
And he started looking at me. I said, "So we're all consumers." And so I pay a lot of license fees, a ton of license fees. And by paying those license fees, I am supporting the Game and Fish departments that protect. And I just met with the head of the Mississippi Game and Fish Commission this week, and he said, "Will, I need your help. All these people are wanting, the hikers, the bird watchers, everybody is wanting to share in the habitats of the Mississippi wildlife fisheries and parks. But only the hunters and fishermen are paying for it. We've got to find a way to get them to want to participate because they've got it free. They're not paying." I said, "What about the excise, the Robertson-Pittman Act, where we're paying excise taxes and we're funding for all the equipment we buy, all the bows, the equipment, the accessories, the guns, the ammunition. We're paying into to protect more and more and more." He said, "Well, they're not paying anything. They buy a kayak, they buy a bicycle, they pay nothing." So, very interesting thing to realize what all the good is that we do.
Yeah, hunters are the truest conservationists and the original conservationist, and they don't get credit for that.
Thank heavens for Roosevelt.
Yeah.
He's one of my heroes. Oh my gosh. To have the vision that he did and to do some of the things he did in Yellowstone. Oh gosh.
Especially back then when none of this was an issue. Mm-hmm. To have that foresight, to be able to set it up, knowing what was coming.
And Otto Leopold, oh my gosh. Conservation goes so long back in our heritages, and we just need to pay attention.
Absolutely.
History is very important.
It is.
Politically, not to bring up a subject right now, we're fixing to have an election, but politically, history is so important. Conservation, it's important to see what's happened when we dirtied the water and dirtied the streams, and we cut trees all the way up to the stream bank and it's silted in and it's no longer navigable. Oh, come on. We've ruined a lot of things. We humans have, and we've got to fix that.
Yep. So that brings up a question for you.
Okay.
If there was one person who's a non-hunter that you could take elk hunting and share that experience with them, who would it be?
The first name that comes to my mind will cause tremendous controversy because she's running for president and she might not come back from the trip. But I would have to think about that for a while. But it is probably some of the people that I grew up with in high school that I know what I've done for a living, and I'm starting to see them again. I'm 64, and their parents, my parents are getting older. My daddy's 91, mama's 89, and we're going to more and more funerals. And even some of my friends have died. So we're seeing who we grew up with, because we were all friends back then, people that came here to Brent's Drugs. And I'd want to take them so they can see. Because at one of these funerals, one of the guys walked up and says, "Well, I catch you on TV every once in a while." He says, "Do you really love it that much?" And this guy has no clue as to why and what it is, the peace, and you got to kill something. I mean, if we do, what's so wonderful is to be able to attach yourself to providing for yourself.
Yep.
And processing the game and being able to cook it and enjoy a meal and to realize what the people who founded this country. I'm a student of the mountain men, and I haven't done what they did. One of the things they did was they would dip the meat in the bile as a flavor. And I ain't doing that yet. But I love the mountain men and I love their stories. And Jeremiah Johnson is a movie about John Johnston, and the story, that it's a little folklore and a little truth, but the name of the book's Crow Killer. The movie came out in 1972, and I have it on my phone, I have it on my iPad. I've probably watched it 6,000 times, and I have the transcript of the whole movie. So anybody says a quote, because there's tons of one-liners from Jeremiah Johnson.
I was going to say, and you never use any of those quotes, do
Oh
you?
yeah, oh yeah. I plagiarize Jeremiah Johnson in every elk video we do, and fully admit it.
So what's been your most memorable elk hunt?
My most memorable elk hunt is one at the CA Ranch in Montana. And my wife is the caller, supposed to be the caller. And the ranch owner, Frank Anderson, is there with us. And we had seen this elk coming down the mountain the day before, and he's out in the middle of an open area, but there's a coulee, and he's in the coulee, and there's water in there. So he's got a herd of about 20 cows. He's a beautiful elk. He's got short thirds, but he's a 370 bull, even with short thirds. So we got in there and got the wind, and we're walking up an elk trail, trying to get up to where we can see a little better on the top of this edge of this ridge, and suddenly I see a time. It's about 40 yards away. And I realize that he's right there, and all of a sudden I hear the cows, and they're with him, and then he bugles. I mean, we're on top of it. So I just froze. I'm in the elk trail. And just Mary, they haven't said a word. Mary's behind me, and she's watching all this. The camera's right behind me, and I'm in the trail, and all of a sudden the cow's head appears. Oh gosh. And she starts coming down the trail. And so he's coming, he doesn't want her to lead him. So he's doing his horns, coming through the branches, and all of a sudden, I mean, he's at 10 yards. And it's now or never. If she's fixing the booger, she knows something's up. She's trying to figure us out, you know. And so she starts the booger, and draw at the same time. And he boogers, and I try to stop him, and he never could stop him. I mean, I did get drawn on him for a millisecond, but my pin was too low. I had to bring it up, and then he boogered. So, you know, we're walking off the mountain, and we're reliving the moment. It's the last day, and Frank Anderson's become a great friend, and I love the guy. My wife loves the guy. And we laugh and hunt elk and just share the times in his part of the world that God given his family to be a steward of for a while. I mean, I got through talking about it, and he goes, you know, this is one of the most rewarding hunts I've ever been a part of. I said, what do you mean, Frank? He goes, because it's obvious. You don't have to kill something to have a good time. And that was one of the finest compliments, but that hunt stays in my mind because it was so close and up close. Yeah. It was cool.
That's awesome.
It was.
Hey guys, I sure hope you're enjoying this awesome 3-part interview series that I had the privilege of being a part of with my good friend Will Primos. I first met Will in 1995 when I was just 19 years old, and have been fortunate to have a friendship and a relationship with him for the past several years. In part 2 of the interview, Will and I talk about a ton of different topics, and we talk about public land versus private land elk hunting. We talk about the early days of Primos game calls when he was building calls in his garage and using temporary employees. Will also talks about some of the prototype calls that never made it to the market, as well as the design ideas behind some of the calls that have made it to the market that we're very familiar with. He also shares a super funny story about some of the materials that were used to make some of the original calls. You don't want to miss part 2 of this interview. And to make sure you don't miss it, click right up here and subscribe to the Elk101 YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified every time a new video comes out, including part 2. And while you're waiting for part 2, click right down here and watch the Linguists film that Sitka Gear released last summer about a topic that I'm super passionate about, the topic of elk and the history of elk calling.